Hello and welcome to the Low Code Podcast. I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack, and we are the global specialists in OutSystems recruitment. With this podcast, our aim is to increase awareness and appreciation of OutSystems and its impact and benefits to the market, and our early adoption is giving competitive edge to businesses worldwide. During our podcast, myself and my colleague Sushil Chauhan will be speaking to IT leaders and OutSystems MVPs on how OutSystems has transformed their businesses and careers. We also hope that by speaking to MVPs on their career journeys, we can inspire developers from all over the world to learn from others who have already been on the path. So let's go.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of our Low Code Podcast. Today I have with me Steve Dalgleish from Shepherd and Wedderburn. Steve is the head of technology. Is that right, Steve? So I've got that.
It is. Yeah, right. That's right.
How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. You?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I know you're in lovely Edinburgh, Scotland. We're in West London, so we've got a nice, beautiful day here, and great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So, Steve, I'm just going to. We can start by maybe talking a little bit about yourself. I know you've been at Shepherd and Wedderburn, which is a major law firm in Scotland. Just tell us a little about yourself and the company. And
yeah, that's fine. So Shepherd and Wedderburn's a mid-sized UK-based law firm, headquartered in Edinburgh, offices around the UK. About 500 staff, covering a wide variety of legal areas. I've been with Shepherd and Wedderburn for 15, 16 years now. I'm on my fourth job at the company. So I've been around a little bit, started in digital marketing and moved up to software developer and worked my way up now to head of technology, which really encompasses a number of different things, primarily around provision of service, improving productivity, efficiency, client service delivery, but also things like data architecture and how we can make best use of the assets that we have. And I guess more recently, we've my team in particular have sort of pivoted from being fully internal facing to being a much more of a combination between the internal facing requests and requirements, as well as working directly with the firm's clients and developing and deploying services out to them, for which OutSystems has been a major part.
Great. And in terms of when you said you've been with the firm quite a while, and no doubt a point came in the sort of history where you thought to yourself, we need digital transformation or we need some sort of change or whatever. What was driving, from your point of view, what was driving that change, the need for that?
So the legal industry is typically quite conservative. It's not what is innovative in the legal sector tends to be lagging behind consumer electronics or mainstream technology. So there was a recognition that our clients are beginning to request services of us and make sure that we are doing things to the best of our ability in the most efficient way. And there was kind of an understanding in the firm that things needed to change in order to service those requirements and ourselves just become more efficient. Things like the financial crisis of the late 2000s really drove pressure on price in terms of the price that we charge our clients, but also how we deliver services to them. So it's been a long journey from that realization or the understanding at that point right through to now. But I guess in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, it's come a lot more heavily into focus, which has driven the sort of investment in both in my team and what we can provide to the business and clients. So it's kind of it's developed not organically, but there's been direction behind it. But a lot of things have happened based on clients or people in the business, having an interest and requesting certain things or certain projects to happen. And I guess what previously we were doing things just with raw code, which is absolutely fine and works very well when the requests are sort of smaller scale. And over the last few years, those requests have become much more transformational to business critical. That really required a bigger team, some fairly close collaboration within the team, and much more engagement with the business. And what we found is that the low code platforms has really helped that journey in terms of agility, speed of deployment, and getting over the sort of blank canvas syndrome, where if you put an idea in front of someone, they find it quite hard to visualize, but you can very quickly knock up a base idea to give them something to look at and go, oh yeah, that's actually along the lines of what I'm looking for, or not quite. Let's pivot a little bit. So from that point of view, it's been a very strong proposition.
I suppose. I mean, how Shepherd and Wedderburn have been going since 18 something, haven't they? 18 something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
A lot of these, I think, a lot of we've come across other industries actually as well, where they're very kind of, in some ways old, if you like, I don't know if you want to call it that, but they're now clashing with the latest changes in technology, to bring them on board and stuff. So, but I mean, a lot of people haven't even heard of low code, so as opposed to kind of traditional coding, traditional methods and stuff. So, what was it about? And I mean, we know what it is. It's low code. Maybe you can talk for 30 seconds about that, and why it was the low code solution, in particular OutSystems as well, that you went down the route of, and how you came across it, and rather than the traditional sort of methods.
So part of it was situational. At the time, the firm had a very small development team with a very probably immature business analysis capability. And we wanted to sort of merge those capabilities together so that we could deploy and deliver solutions, effective solutions, much more quickly. And we came across the idea of low code and thought about it and thought, actually, this makes a lot of sense, where could have a much more cohesive team by merging those functions together.
Right.
And that's so proven. But we went through a sort of proof of concepts and endless sales demos with a number of different providers, and we settled on OutSystems as the platform of choice. And getting started is, there's a learning curve. There's a learning curve with any new technology. But what we did find is it allowed us to get going and get up to a certain level very, very quickly, so that we could start producing applications which would become production applications pretty swiftly after the initial implementation. And that's really good to be able to show progress like that to a business that's still understanding its relationship with technology and understanding that it needs to progress substantially to become to a much more efficient organization. So being able to show that constant iterative process and development it was incredibly valuable to us.
So in terms of the apps that you've been developing, they're to kind of customer facing and internal. So I suppose they've improved customer experience and the way you do things within the business as well. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how many apps were you developing and how long that took. So
I mean, the first app we took on, and we made a mistake on this one. Absolutely, hands up. We chose something that was far too big for a first project. We should have done something nice and small and got some confidence up. But no, we went straight in to the big project, which was dealing with payment requests and receipting money into our business. And for a law firm, that is absolutely central to the operations of the firm. This was to get away from paper forms, illegible handwriting, whose signature is that sort of idea, and put it through something much more codified and much more auditable, and just improve the speed of processing by our finance teams. So a lot of integration to the underlying systems, a lot of validation and business logic to be taken into consideration. And that did take quite a while. As I say, we made a mistake. We should have gone for something smaller. So the initial build on that was 6-7 months, and it should have. Were we doing it now, we would do it substantially quicker.
And that I suppose that was also because that was your first one. You were still kind of learning the ropes,
exactly,
systems and everything. So
you go down one route, and you go, actually that's not really quite right, and you sort of reverse it back and go the next time. But it did give us that sort of solid base, so that once we finished that application, we went, okay, we've learned a lot there. How do we apply that going forward? And I guess where we're at now is we're now at the point where we do architect the solutions a lot more sensibly and intelligently for reuse and flexibility. So we do have a suite of the sort of core services, if you like, which makes building front-end applications an awful lot quicker, because we've done the hard work already to get the data in a format we want, build the integrations to all the internal and external systems, and we're just pulling them in and using them. And that's one of the beautiful things of low code, is that once you build it once, you can just drag it in and reuse it. Which is starting to pay benefits now. I mean, it's taken a long time to get to that really good pragmatic base that we can use again and again. But it does mean that now we're at that point where someone comes in with a request saying there's a new regulatory obligation, or this client would like to do whatever weird and wonderful thing it is. We're in a position where we can go, yep, okay, we've got that. We can pull it in and we say, here's a first version for you to have a look at and say, is this along the right lines?
And how have you found, in terms of the interaction of the kind of business with your sort of technology team as well? You said earlier as well that you were able to, the iterative process, that you were able to kind of come back very much quicker at interim stages to say, we've done this, we've done this. And was that very different to what was happening before between sort of the team and the business?
Yes and no. I mean, the basics were there. They weren't perhaps as formalized as we do now. I think there was the methodology was, I need this, go and build it. And we'll go, okay, fine, no problem. That does not work, as everyone knows. There does need to be that level of engagement between the all parties working on a project. It's not a technical project. It's usually a behavioral or a cultural project with a technical element. But I think what it's proven is that having it in a local platform does mean that non-legal users, back when we actually used offices, could stand over your shoulder and look at it and go, oh, I see what you're trying to do. Or if you're building a process or a workflow, it's intelligible enough. It's not reams and reams of code. It's icons on a screen connected via arrows and dots and things like that. You can actually understand it. I think even that level has helped that engagement, because previously you'd be describing what your code does and hoping you're describing it right, rather than showing a screen and saying, this goes into this box, which goes into this box, which makes a decision here and splits. It's making it an awful lot more visible and understandable by non-technical users. Yes, there's technical elements, of course there is. And the design elements are absolutely crucial to that. But in terms of finishing it off, the look and feel, you could do it with a screen share. We don't particularly, but you could. But certainly in terms of correcting the logic or applying the logic, it's very good to I know OutSystems are very keen on the phrase citizen developers. I don't think we're at that stage. I'm not convinced we ever will be or should be, but it does mean that it's easier to get concepts across to the non-technical user base.
Okay. And I suppose if you were sort of giving advice to someone else about how to go about things and how things might pan out in terms of being able to deliver those projects fast. If somebody's thinking about this, there could be lots of people in a similar position to you, wondering, what should we do? How should we solve these problems? What will be your kind of 2 or 3 key lessons and key things that you would say, oh, I wish we'd done this different, or I wish we'd done that. You mentioned the thing about not taking on big projects at the beginning and so on, things like that. But is there anything else where you would sort of, in hindsight, say, oh, if you're thinking about it, these are the reasons why you should think about low code, and this is what I would advise? Yep.
First one is just forget the technology, which sounds contradictory to my role, but it is very much true that the people in the process are much, much more important. Spend the time understanding the process or defining what your process should be, who's going to do that, what the requirements around security and auditability and all those things are. Get them defined up front. Makes your build very much easier. We fall into this trap again and again, as we do some scoping and we think, great, we understand this fully, and you go off and build it, and it's absolutely nothing to do with what you're actually trying to achieve. What we do now, or try to do now, is spend an awful lot more time up front just delving into what the requirements are, what the possibilities are. And I think that's one of the hardest things that we've had to do when we're trying to maybe augment an existing legal process, is understanding that legal process. Because you ask a lawyer, what do they do? And they go, well, I just do it. Well, why'd you do it? It's just the next thing what I do. I just okay. So what considerations go into that? And it actually takes a lot of teasing out from people to say, well, I think about X, I think about Y, I think about Z, and then maybe something else can happen. Could this ever happen? No, it can never happen. Well, maybe in 0.01% of times it could happen. Right, okay, so we need to handle that. It's kind of teasing out those detailed requirements. You go down to a very, very low level. And that's really been, I guess, where we've fallen flat a few times, is you maybe don't go down to that level and understand all the possibilities that
The
could potentially occur,
nuances,
all the edge
nuances,
cases.
yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, you don't want things to fall out of whatever process you're building. So you have to make sure there's something in place to handle that. And I think that's certainly one of the key learnings that we've had over the last few years, is to spend the time up front to get that knowledge. I mean, I guess the other one is, we did one very large project for a big client, and we effectively had a lawyer seconded to my team for 4 or 5 months, which was really good in terms of bouncing ideas off him, but it also thoroughly educated him into what it takes to automate legal process, which is something as a firm that we're quite keen on, because there's efficiency and service delivery benefits to that. But he's now geared up to do that process again and again in different spheres potentially. When the need occurs, he knows that we need, or my team would need, a definitive, it needs to be 1, 2, 3, or 4, rather than, well, I just do it. We've kind of indoctrinated him, if you like, into conversing from business or legal process to how do we codify this into a technical process.
So there's a much better appreciation, I suppose, of getting him involved.
Because as a technical team, we're not experts in the law, and we never will be. We shouldn't be. That's why we pay lawyers. But they need to, be aware that we certainly, both sides, the technical and the legal, do need to work together an awful lot better. And communication is obviously key, but certainly both sides having an understanding of the other's needs is crucial.
Yeah. So from their point of view, I mean that you mentioned that interaction with that customer, with one of your big customers. I mean, is there a lot more kind of the customer experience now? I mean, how would they kind of rate things now compared to where you were before?
I think there's certain types of transaction that really benefit from strong degrees of automation. Certainly the one we did for this large client was volume. So, it was a couple of thousand different instances of the same process. That's absolutely ripe for automation. Yeah. Where it's maybe harder is where, things genuinely are bespoke. I mean, lawyers love to think everything they do is completely bespoke. There's no process. They know what to do. Yeah. Most work types, there is some level of standardization. It's just they're maybe not willing to accept it, or maybe not aware of it as such, but there is. Yeah. There are 1 or 2 which are genuinely completely and utterly bespoke, and they're really hard to try and gather some benefits or understand how you could augment that process to improve it. Generally it's around how do you track progress. So you're looking at sort of basic case management type functionalities. But if it is that bespoke, how much value is there in that? Some maybe, but I mean, and certainly there's a happy ground in between where it's not volume work. So we're not looking at 100 a day. We're looking at, maybe 5 or 6 a year, where there's structure in place, and you're looking at how do you communicate that to other people in the firm? How do you communicate that to the client? And I guess for us, it means there's less answering phones or emails saying, where are we? And the client, again, it's the same point. They can come into, if we deploy on our portal or what have you, they can come in and they can just see that information without having to bother us, which incurs cost to them, incurs cost to us, etc., etc. So I think we're starting to see more engagement from people around the business that they're realizing what's possible based on what we've achieved already, and saying, actually, I want a bit of that.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned before as well, when I was reading up on your sort of case study and things, that the number of sort of cases that each lawyer can now handle compared to what it was before is massively kind of different.
It is, because again, you're looking to take out that low hanging fruit level. You're looking to take out the methodical, easy stage of each legal transaction and focus the high cost resource on adding the value to it. So rather than spending a day and a half drafting an agreement, you're saying, well, okay, we can automate version 1 of the agreement, which takes you to 90%. So rather than spending the time just getting to a base level, you're spending the time adding the value and localizing it to the individual scenario, which is much more effective for both us and the client.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I know you've got a kind of small team now that you've kind of built up. And just describe to me, as you were kind of going through this process of digital transformation in a way, how that team came together and how you were able to build that team up, and how hard was that?
Yeah, so I mean, low code is one of those things where it's really hard to recruit existing skills, as I'm sure you're probably well aware. And certainly up, until a year and a half ago, we were firmly office based. So we would be looking for staff in central Scotland, which if
not
you've
the
tried,
easiest,
it's not easy to get that level of skill. So you acknowledge that it's not going to happen, and you find the best people with the best approach, and you train them up on OutSystems. So that, when you're starting out, you're all at the same point. You're starting at ground zero, and you're building up, and you're learning by your mistakes, and you're moving on. But as you build up that in-house practice, when you bring someone on, yes, there's a whole pile of training and guided pathways that the vendors provide, and that's absolutely brilliant. It's invaluable to get from 0 to 1, but from getting from 1 to 100, you've got, as well as the online resources, you've got that local expertise that you can rely on to transfer that knowledge a bit better. So it's kind of grown where we now have 5 or 6 of us with more than a year or more than 2 years worth of OutSystems experience, and that's where you really start motoring.
So the people that you brought up, are they kind of all from all over the world? They're remote and working, or are they kind of, or are they still based in Scotland?
Still based in central Scotland. Just haven't needed to recruit since the pandemic started. Obviously, it makes life a little bit tricky. But it does broaden our horizons now. Is to say, well, do they need to be in central Scotland? And the answer is not really. Not really. Could be anywhere they want, particularly as long as the work can get done and they can interact during core business hours, I suspect, but it allows us a lot more flexibility to perhaps bring in, somebody with a good level of OutSystems skills. So all your training is the localized knowledge.
Yeah. So, and what would you say? I mean, from a point of view of kind of, at the head of technology as opposed to the business side, there's various problems. We found as well where when we're talking to people about low code, and a lot of people haven't heard of it in terms of the people who are thinking about maybe learning a new technology or whatever. What's your kind of key advice to people regarding this particular technology? If it's something they're thinking, is it? Would you say they should definitely, this is a valuable skill to have and something that's new? And
I think it very much emphasizes approach and design capabilities. I guess we've maybe struggled a little bit more if we were recruiting for a pure development role. We tend to find that pure code-based developers are maybe more reluctant to look at open or low code as a solution. Whereas I guess what I tried to recruit for is based on your approach. So you need to be able to show your understanding of a problem, and you need to show an ability to design a solution that fits both with the business architecture we already have and the requirements of that individual project. And training the local platform is almost secondary, because if you have those skills, chances are you've already got some understanding of logic and computer programming fundamentals, and that's really enough to get going on OutSystems. The drag and drop capability of that platform makes it very easy to train. And we've been on the OutSystems platform for a number of years now. It's easy enough to point them in the direction of existing examples. So if you're stuck, have a look at this and see if you can make it work. And if not, come back and talk, and we'll work through it together.
Absolutely. And I think certainly from when we've been talking to various people, some people are, as you say, reluctant who if they're already embedded in some other hardcore technology, they're kind of not always keen to switch over. I think when we talk to computer graduates as well, computer science graduates, they're very open to look at new things and stuff. So and that way it's easier as well. But I think it's one of those things that's from our experience, low code and has really come to the fore in the last few years, I would say, in the last sort of 5 years, rather than what would you say about that? And what would you say in terms of the things that have changed in the last 5 years?
I think that's right. I think when it was 2014, so 6-7 years ago, when we first started looking at this, and you mentioned, we're looking at low code platforms, and people would look at you going, why? Because the perception at that stage was that the rapid development, the drag and drop functionality is limiting. I guess it goes back to the old days when you could build web pages using HTML editors, and they were fairly limited in what they could do. But this is a different level of what's possible. And yes, there are caveats and things you have to work around. The same as in any technology. But what we have found is it has not limited us in what we can achieve. There are ways to do everything that we have needed to do so far. I think that's it kind of justifies the investment. But in terms of has it evolved? Yes, it absolutely has. We in the legal tech sector, which is just technology at the end of the day, not legal tech. We have seen a number of entrants who are pushing no-code solutions, and we look at them and go, "Is it really no-code?" And it does a job, and it's very, very good. But there is we do feel there's a little bit of a limitation, what they call no-code, but low-code takes away an awful lot of that limitation and gives you the ability to augment those capabilities should you need to. It puts us in a more comfortable position that we can service what our business needs.
Yeah, and I suppose the other things that I think some people don't really appreciate is really an enterprise level solution. It's not just a local app or something like that.
Right.
I mean, there obviously are solutions for local apps and things, but there's a lot quite large organisations as well using OutSystems. So, in terms of the you were talking before about the processes within the legal sector, and then some of them can be automated, some of them can't. I mean, where do you see, in the future, do you see the advancement of technology around AI and other kind of automated processes being able to break through some more of those complex tasks?
Yes and no. I think we're starting to see some uses of machine learning which add genuine value. I think a lot of it's been quite gimmicky up until now, or vendors are very keen to put AI in their marketing literature, and you look at the actual capabilities and go, it's not really going to help us a significant amount. That said, law is a knowledge-based industry, so as a result, our assets are primarily digital. We have a document management system with around about 50 million items in it. You can't ever hope to manually classify that, for instance. So you're looking to algorithms and machine learning applications to troll through that data. And I think that's probably where the next big win is going to come from, is the data we already hold. So yes, we have very well structured data sets around time and billing and all the financial management of the firm. That's great. It's very, very useful. We also have immense amounts of data in semi-structured repositories, and actually, there's an immense amount of value that could be harnessed from that, and AI is going to be crucial to that, because it's the only way to handle that volume. You look at 50 million items and go, how many contracts in this sphere do we have? And the answer is not a clue. But you can start training models to go across that and start categorizing these fairly granularly. But becomes very powerful, be able to identify, within a sector, how many contracts of these have we done in the last year, who did them, who should I speak to. It's about that almost expertise, but it's also about being more proactive to clients, because the potential exists in that data set to be much more proactive with potential issues for our clients. We've seen this in this sector. Have you considered it? And it's an opportunity for us to do some business development and perhaps get some work out of it.
So I think, it seems that maybe the legal sector in particular as well is kind of particularly suited maybe to some of these developments that we hope to see coming along. I mean, I don't know what the timeline is on any of these things, but maybe within the next 5 years. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think it's ever going to make lawyers completely redundant. I think there is still a need for some human interaction, the sort of sentient being argument. I guess it does still need the perhaps compassion in some of these transactions. But absolutely. It will certainly make the lawyers much more focused, efficient, in using their legal training to add value for the client, and it takes away a lot of the manual effort. And we're certainly seeing that already in some looking for anomalous documents or anomalous clauses in contracts if using some of the machine learning tools on the market, and they're very good, but they provide you with a report which you still need to then interpret and apply.
Okay, great. Okay, well, that's been really interesting, Steve. I hope that we can catch up again. I mean, no doubt your team will continue to grow, and we should, maybe we can catch up again in 6-12 months or something to see how things are going.
Yeah, happy to.
Until then, thank you for your time. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Low Code Podcast, hosted by iTrack, Global OutSystems recruitment specialist. Be sure to subscribe, and see you next time.